All right, so here's just what happened. A small team in San Francisco just beat OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google at their own game. And they built an AI agent that basically outperforms GPT-5 and Claude, even when using those exact same models. And they just raised $50 million because companies like MongoDB, Zapier are seeing 31 times faster development with their tool. And yesterday, I tested Droids live for the first time. And honestly, it did things that I haven't seen any other agent pull off, like basically planning, the error handling, the execution of the code. And to me, it feels like a whole nother paradigm of AI coding. And if you've been coding with me for a little while, especially since the very beginnings, we've been involved in the evolution of seeing agents like Cursor, other agents like Windsurf, and all these like agents coming through into the scene and kind of taking over and helping us assist with our AI coding. So I want to introduce you today my guest. His name is Eno Reyes from Factory AI, and he's a technical founder who are using Droids to write code daily. And here's what we're going to be covering in the next 45 minutes. We're going to cover why they can extract 58% performance from Claude on the terminal benchmark when Anthropic themselves can only get about 43%. We're also going to talk about the specific techniques that you can steal for any AI coding agent tool that you're using. Also go over like what's the current ecosystem, that's like what's actually missing from the current ecosystem, especially with these different AI coding tools. And we're also going to go over the answer to the question that I know half of you are asking right now is, do I really need another CLI coding tool? So whether you're brand new to coding or you're just trying to build your first app, or you're a seasoned dev who's actually burned by the token AI promises, or maybe you're just a designer who wants to ship without learning React. I think we're going to go through a lot of different types of things here. And if you haven't had a chance to, make sure you check out the link in the description on YouTube. You're going to get 40 million tokens if you go ahead and sign up using my link. It's rfer.me/rayfactory. And I'll have some that actually pinned into the live stream right now on YouTube. So if you go ahead and click that link right up above, you'll be able to do that. So, thank you so much for joining into the show. It's really a pleasure to kind of have you on to the stream. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things here, as you may imagine. And so I think kind of the first thing is like you're beating OpenAI's agents and GPT-5. Like how is that even possible?
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm really pumped to chat about this. The sort of general principle that we go into everything with is there are lots of unknowns with LLMs, and if you start to look at all the different things that are needed in order to solve these more complex benchmarks like terminal bench, there's just such a long tail of things that are not related to the model's own capabilities itself. And what I mean by that are if you need to, as an example, run a command and then wait for it to finish while you're doing something else, that is a feature of a product, not something that is like inherently LLM bottlenecked. And there are hundreds of these behavioral patterns and configurations and really like product level decisions that you have to bring into your agent that really fall ultimately on the scaffold. And so what we found is that a lot of benchmarks really help you explore and test all of these micro decisions at a much faster rate than what even like user feedback can provide. And so optimizing for a benchmark is never a good idea because you're going to end up trying to overfit. But if you use benchmarks as sort of like a way to identify bugs, identify features or patterns that you actually have to build out, I think that allows you to unlock a lot more capability in the products. So if you think about what these tools were built for, right? They were built for OpenAI and for Anthropic, yeah, referring specifically at least to Claude Code and Codex CLI. First and foremost, to help basically post-train the models with long-running agentic trajectories. That is their goal, right? They
Mm.
wanted to make the models good at being an agent. And one of the only places where you can run an LLM for many steps and get feedback is coding right now. And so I think that those teams weren't necessarily thinking 100% this is our end all be all product. They were thinking we really want to optimize for post training and the research component. And so I think of a lot of what companies like us exist for is to say, well, what if we made this into the best possible product experience that it could be?
Mm. And in terms of product experience, when people are signing up right now, they're going to get that 40 million tokens, as behalf of this whole sponsorship. For those who don't know, Factory AI is actually sponsoring this entire weekend. And so we got to code live yesterday. And if you haven't had a chance to, make sure you grab those 40 million tokens. So I really appreciate you kind of giving that out as a thank you for the community, for reaching out and kind of getting inspired, because people may have heard your name Factory, and then, I think you're involved in enterprise and very much so forth. But now, like you're saying, for this specific use cases to reach out to, like as far as like the impact of things, how would you say that people should approach using, the Droid, this CLI type of tool in their workflow? Because I think a lot of people like me, it's like I have my existing prompts, I have my existing slash commands. I've made so many investments in Claude Code, in OpenAI's new codex with GPT-5. And so I come in with all this pre-existing thinking. How should I kind of approach, right out the get-go with this little box? Like, what should I do? Or what do you find are the best practices for people who have been kind of migrating over?
Yeah, totally. And we tried to make it really easy to, one, in like adopt the standards that a lot of other tools are using. So, we support agents.md. We were actually like working really closely with OpenAI when we sort of launched that together with a bunch of other tools, AMP. I think now it's very well supported. But for things like slash commands, I will be the first one to say, I think that people sometimes are scared to say, look, that's a great idea. Let's just implement that, right? But we looked at all these tools, and there's a lot of good things that already existed. So we were said, well, let's make sure that developers can have consistency in a product experience that they might expect. Like all IDEs have a lot of these patterns, for example, that are adopted across them, or all tools that help you manage projects have certain concepts that, like Linear, Jira, Asana. And so for us, we don't want to go too far away. So things like custom slash commands are implemented in the Droid CLI at least. And you can import them from your other tools. So you just hit I, and then you can import exactly from Claude or any other tool that you actually already have custom slash commands or custom sub agents, or even we're about to ship hooks, and we'll do the same thing for that.
Wow.
So yeah, so it should be pretty easy to transition, and honestly share those sorts of standards. And if you're just getting started, I think that probably where you will see the biggest difference in our product is whatever's like the maximum scope, like the I'd say like just the edge of what you think is too challenging for a coding agent. I would encourage you to actually maybe even start by saying, let me tackle that slightly more complex task, because we sort of designed the system to be better at that sort of thing. And so I think that you'll actually see the biggest delta by tackling a larger project, putting it in specification mode, which is basically when you
Okay.
hit Shift Tab. It is a form of not planning, but rather specification of what it is that you want to build. And that I think will give you that best intro experience.
Oh, that's really, really cool. I'm glad that you say that, because I can't tell you how many tools that I've used. And when I speak to the actually founding engineers, that's the first thing I do. I just literally just blat my whole thing. It's like, I want to actually, somebody in my Discord, his name is Codex, went through and said, I converted everything from Supabase over to Convex because I needed a real time operational syncing thing. And he wrote this really amazing write up, and he just says, I just threw everything at it all at once. And he actually did it in less than, like, I think it was like 20 million, less than 20 million tokens or something. It was a huge migration with all these different types of points that he wanted to do. And like, it's interesting how you're saying about that shift tab, and changing into spec mode, and probably a little bit different than Claude's like planning mode, because I find Claude's planning mode good, but then it's kind of like really small. And I've had to like make my own documents to kind of work around it, saying, here's how I want my spec files to be done with these specific considerations. But yeah, like one of the impressive things that I've seen is just I can kind of throw lots of ideas. Like yesterday on the live stream, all I did was I was like, hey, I want to add Polar, and like, here's some docs, here's some other things. And then I was like, you know what? I've been waiting to refactor this large repo of mine with my transcription app. and I want to use the Vercel AI SDK, the latest version v5. I don't even have it written for that. I want to have fallback for models. I want to have I have a route handler that's currently being used on Cloudflare, and I actually want to, convert it all so I can use it on Convex, right? So that's like rewriting it so that's all, and then Convex has their own schemes, and it's a big file as far as all the rules and the reactiveness of data. So this is something I've been wanting to put off for a long time because there's all these different steps, right? Even with these latest AI coding tools and stuff. And so I just threw that into Droid yesterday, and it churned and churned, and it was actually clarifying with me along the way and didn't gaslight me and say, you're absolutely right. I'm just going to, here's your plan executed, just like you said. And that's actually what I really appreciate about the Droid agent overall that I've seen, but also others are starting to see that. It's like, oh, okay, I can throw a lot at it and it seems to be able to pick things up, but then it doesn't really seem to get lost like other types of things or other types of agents that I've used. And I also find that it doesn't want to exit out right away and saying, hey, I'm done. I think it seems to be very smart about trying to break up the task into different phases and then complete them and kind of check in with you and say, this is kind of what I've got working so far. Can you verify some other things or do things like that? And so in terms of context management, how are you doing this? I feel like it seems obvious now. I mean, everyone's been talking about context management as a buzzword, but kind of where did this thinking come from, and how are you already so good? Because the terminal bench score shows. I mean, I want to show you real quick. I think, or most people who haven't seen this yet, basically it's the score for terminal bench, the accuracy by model for Opus. You're already at 58% using their own model, which is insane. GPT-5, 52%, Sonnet, 50%. And this is already using Claude Code's harness there, Claude Code's harness here, and you're already eking them out. And it's for me, it's very clear. When I give it all these instructions, there's obviously some really advanced context management here. So I kind of want to hear from you a little bit more. What's the secret sauce? What are you doing? If you can, I mean, I don't want to have you spill all the beans and stuff like that, but I do want to learn more because this behavior is emergent to me. It feels emergent, it's coming out. And I think the more that people are going to use this, they're going to start to see this is a very different type of thing.
Yeah, totally. And by the way, I will literally spill every bean if I think there's so many beans to be spilled that I could be here for hours talking about all these micro decisions. And I think that at the end of the day, one thing that I'd like to note on that is it, these things just change so fast that I think the biggest advantage or moat that exists today is not knowing these this special combination of 30 runes that you have to incite in order to create an agent like this, but instead having a team of people that deeply care about doing this every single day and discovering more of these tricks and tips and continuing to optimize. So I wanted to start with that. I think that there's a couple of different categories of things that people might be interested in. And the blog actually goes into some detail on some of these, and it goes into less detail on others. So maybe to the higher order thing, when you think about what makes these CLI tools so addictive, I think that the speed is the thing that makes people care a lot. You want the system to feel like it's fast, like it's interactive. If you queue up a prompt, it's gonna, run that command and then it's immediately thinking about the next thing. And in order to do that, you really have to take advantage of prompt caching. So that's sort of one of the big rules for these is you effectively need to have an append only agent loop, which is actually pretty tricky because how do you make a decision for example, IDE diagnostics? When a droid writes code and it's in your IDE, and you've set it up for that, it will ingest the diagnostics from your IDE to figure out, did it write some code that has a lint error? And so where do you put that? Do you put it inside of the file? Do you put it after the most recent user message? Do you put it before at the beginning of the session? There's a bunch of decisions like that I think come into things like tool descriptions, the actual base behavioral guidelines, system notifications. And so where you choose to even place these pieces of information Ultimately, what you need is you need something like a couple of benchmarks in order to figure out what the actual best answer is, right?
Wow.
And there is just a best answer. Like you inject system notifications as user notifications immediately after the action is taken. And then you need to remind the agent to continue on its path, right? So there's a bunch
Ah.
of stuff like this, right?
And Droid
Um,
is handling that, which is your platform. For those who haven't installed it, it's the command line interface from Factory AI. There's a getting started guide, and once you sign up and so forth, if you haven't done that so far, you can get that up and running. And so this is like a different behavior than other types of agents that folks are using, and is describing this kind of like secret sauce. And for those who are listening, your competitors are like taking notes, take the notes right now.
yeah.
But like you're saying, I think there's so many techniques that even if you tell everyone and they implement them, there's still so much more ground to cover. And actually, I feel like the more that you give this out, the more it's going to help the entire ecosystem, right? Because you guys are
Oh yeah.
tackling a lot of different problems. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, I want everybody to have faster agents. Like you should take advantage of prompt caching. And we have an engineer. His name is Stepan, and I'll let him know that we shouted him out if he's not watching. But he was relentless about making sure that every little action is super optimized for the prompt cache, and that the whole agent loop handles these system diagnostics in a way that keeps the agent going without breaking the cache. And I think that really helps with the overall design. There's a couple of other things with models as well,
Hmm.
and this is actually, I think, one of the big reasons why I really encourage teams to not focus on just one model. I think
Hmm.
that's common advice in the space right now is just make it work for Sonnet, or like just make it work for GPT-5, and then you can add more models. But what we found is that there are these like decisions that get made where if you are looking at how, for example, an OpenAI based model works, and how an OpenAI based scaffolding works, they're going to make a bunch of these decisions that are like just great decisions that you're like, oh, we should do something like that. GPT-5 really likes a specific type of patch based editing format, but Claude uses like a string replace style editing format. And so if you try to switch those, they're going to perform poorly. So any like scaffolding that or agent loop basically that gives you the agent a tool that doesn't match the post training of that specific model is going
Wow.
to actually perform worse. So this is something we see in a lot of the generalist tools is they standardize on one specific way to do a thing,
Hmm.
and then it ends up being that because of post training, one model's worse or one model's better. Now that sounds like it's more work for us, but what's interesting is what ends up happening is there are these other decisions that you're like, well, I wonder why they made that. And the realistic answer is nobody's perfect, and sometimes people just implement things quickly, or even this for how powerful and important the coding space is, it's still really early, right? And
Ah,
so what
yes.
what we did is we pick the good out of both systems, and then we also encounter a couple of, well, that doesn't make sense, what if we just did it this other way? And what you end up with is something that's just greater than the sum of its parts. And I think
Mm.
that this is something that being a like multi-model company
Hmm.
helps, or like a company that natively uses both models or more than just those two. It gives us this advantage of seeing sort of around the blind spots of the labs themselves when you're building these sorts of products.
Wow. That's really impressive because I think not only that, there was another comment in my Discord, and I'm also seeing the comments here on YouTube, is that like they're saying that the token efficiency for even just, when they're looking up, like for me, I was shipping a features in like less than a million tokens. And that's kind of unheard of because I would spend a lot more in Claude Code. I mean, you see all the token usage that you use for these types of things. And like you say, there's like this interesting balance of efficiency, but also knowing exactly in the agentic loop, but then the level of detail that you guys are doing in the testing, and then like actually testing the results, getting that feedback loop coming back. And so for those who don't know, you can sign up. I think there's like a $20 a month plan that gets you, I think, 20 million tokens or something like that. But you can also bring your own key. So if I'm a user who wants to use Claude Sonnet and I bring my own key, I don't really have to be too concerned that they're just going to burn away all my tokens because of all the stuff that it does, right? I mean, is that kind of what I get here? There's like a lot of caching techniques and different things you guys are taking advantage of depending on the provider and depending on the key, the key that they put in, right?
Yeah, exactly. We wanted to make sure that people felt like they had full control over the product. I think that there's a lot of stuff when you have things like auth that make it such that you don't really necessarily want to open source everything. But we wanted to get as close as possible to an open, extendable tool where you can bring your own model, you can bring your own keys, because we want developers to know that we're not here to like give you a bunch of free tokens and then pull the rug from you at the last minute, right? Like I think that the pattern of pricing changes and all this other stuff, for what it's worth, I think is totally just out of the fact that no one really knows too far in advance how these things might blow up, or how your existing financial modeling or planning accounted for other decisions you want to make as a business. And so I think for us, like the one thing that we really want to do is make sure that no matter what, you can use this tool. And if you have a pre-existing commit to another provider, if you are just entering into the space and you want something that effectively gives you like a beta hedge on the pricing of tokens. Like when you buy factory subscription, I think the biggest advantage is you don't have to pay for three other like max plan subscriptions where you're switching between max $200 plan A versus max $200 plan B. You can just get one where our promise is we're going to continue to sell the like standard tokens that give you access to all the models from with priority inference for as long as possible. And I think that that's something that, and when I say as long as possible, you have to think that a lot of our business is actually sustained by larger enterprise deals where we do a lot of more platform oriented work in order to make sure that we have a strong business. And
Hmm.
so I think that knowing that our business is actually largely focused on an enterprise revenue stream means that we can actually guarantee a lot more with respect to sustainable consumer token level pricing.
Yeah, I want to touch a little bit about that because I found that really interesting when I was learning more about you guys. And I thought it was really interesting because you found that people who were in the enterprise space when you guys launched a while back, they were actually using this for their side projects. And you're just like, it's that good where, you're like, hey, this usage is not coming from the enterprise. It's from this other really weird app or something like that. And you're just like, I think this is kind of ready for this other type of space. But the other thing I think you guys talked about is that most places like to charge per seat or something like that. And you're just like, we want to charge, just per the usage, because if you're not using it, or, what makes a deal. And I feel like talk a little bit more about the business philosophy here, because you talked a little bit about it. Like your goal is not to come here, bait switch people and be like, hey, use it, get so addicted, and you kind of flip the switch on them. I want to hear a little bit more about that because I think a lot of people don't really understand where you guys are coming from, and then kind of what is your like end goal for how you see like the agentic world of coding with AI and so forth kind of evolving.
Yeah, totally. And I think that it's probably helpful to sort of almost zoom back and speak a little high level about what we are trying to do as a business. We say all the time our mission is to bring autonomy to software engineering, but what does that actually mean in practice? I think what we've seen is that there is so clearly a transition that is happening to a new way to build software, right? This process of specification of what it is you want built, this process of managing the agent and managing the outcomes and sort of seeing what it's doing, and ultimately this process of review. This is changing from I'm the one driving every single aspect of every line of code. And when you come to an organization with a very capable tool and a very capable platform, right? That's about 50% of what needs to happen. You need to get the tool in your hands and you're maybe halfway there. The other 50% is we as a developer community need to start to learn this new way of building software. And so part of that is on the product to be intuitive, but I also think part of it is really to share and build up this like collective patterns that work, these workflows. And so a lot of the effort that I think we make as a business is not only thinking about the tool at any given moment, but also thinking about how can 5,000 developers at a large company actually transition to this. And I think the answer cannot be you bring in a bunch of consultants, or you put on a bunch of workshops. That's important. The workshop part is important. Education is a big part of this. But I think what probably needs to happen is the tools need to evolve, and the environments that they actually operate in need to evolve as well. So what you're actually going to see from us over the next couple of months is a ton of changes in the product that make it more intuitive. But a lot of it is actually going to be focused on how can you build code bases, environments, and tooling for yourself that maximizes the success of agents. And I think that is where we spend a lot of our time with the largest companies with, is actually
Mhm.
saying, oh, well, you've used agents now for 3 months, and these 5 code bases, everyone on that team says this is the best thing I've ever tried in my life. Everything's changed. But these other 5 teams are like, agents are garbage. We've tried every single tool in the space and none of them are working.
Right.
What we said is, why is that happening? When we talk to those teams and you start to look at their code bases, the way that they've organized them, the tooling that they have, you start to realize there's actually this concept of like readiness for
Mm,
agents.
mm.
And I think that a lot of the what the world is sort of entering into is the tools are here. If
I
you've used a Droid, or if you've used a lot of other tools, right? Claude Code is fantastic. Cursor is fantastic. Then you
mhm.
know that like the capability set has come so far. But now it's time for us to start meeting the tools a little bit more. And I think that is going to be like a very exciting time, because it really, our goal is to be, is to create software factories. And part of that is sort of the robots in the factory, the tools in the factory, the droids, of course. But part of that is making sure that your processes are standardized, that your company operates in a way such that every little piece sort of falls into place correctly, even if it doesn't have oversight from humans. So that's sort of that was a long way to say, I think a lot of what we're trying to focus on is not just the tool, but
Mhm.
rather a philosophy of building that is everything that comes after you have the tool.
I think you guys actually coined the term agent native development, which is basically kind of what you're describing. And I used to be an engineer at Apple for 12 years, and yeah, there's projects, especially like in the build system, where I'm working with thousands of projects, like coming in together, and something would happen, and you write a script, and you do whatever. Or if the build falls apart, you kind of kick it, one way, and so forth. And you're dealing. It's not only like legacy code bases, but new code bases, compatibilities. You're dealing with hardware types. You're dealing with lots of different complexity, and you don't have enough time because you're just chasing the latest priority because you have to ship. And so how, like, as these teams are currently adopting this, for me, like the kind of the smoke that I see that's like pretty obvious, it's like if the transformer came in with GPT-3 to kind of make this evolutionary leap where it can actually understand more of the world around it just with the more training data, and do some better classification, and then with GPT-4 this next leap in like actually generating code and kind of sticking to a prescriptive type of thing, and then where prompts are kind of guiding the railings, and then context is really important, and then you guys kind of came in right around this time frame of like, let's just do the agent native way, because now the models can actually output stuff that's good enough for us. Where do you see this kind of going in the next like 18 months? Because to be honest, the last 6 months have felt like 7 years of work.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
thinking models, Claude Code, the agentic workflow, the tools, every time a tool executes, the thinking in between, the next step, the next step, the next step. And then your guys' work coming in with the droids, to kind of rein this in a little bit and kind of make it much more, I guess, steerable, but actually work. And how, yeah, like where do you see this kind of going in that bigger perspective of things, not only for big enterprises, but maybe also for individual developers too? Because I feel like this is a vast range of things. And now that I'm working independently, I'm having to sort of scale down some of these workflows that I used to use, but I still want to have them. I still want reliability. I still want testing. I still want, architecture diagrams. I still want to follow a plan. I want to see a progress, like, but I don't necessarily need, 50 different people to help me with that. I just want conversation.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's a lot of gaps to bridge here, and a lot of different directions to go. Some CEOs are even saying that coding is dead. Like I don't know, there's like I'm a little confused. I just kind of get more of your insight here because this is really speaking from the heart of where what do I
Yeah.
do now? Like where is this really going?
Yeah, totally. I mean, my perspective is that sort of almost like working in reverse order. It has literally never been a better time to start to learn how software works, and I think that how accessible it is becoming will not mean that coding is dead. It's really it's more like software is entering a new era, and that era is the same way that nobody optimizes like bytecode anymore, right? Like no one is out there decompiling their Python or TypeScript code base and inspecting the raw compiled code. And not saying that like LLMs are like the new programming language or something like that. I think they're non-deterministic. There's a difference between the tool and its output, with code being the output. But I think that the thing that is coming next, at least from the perspective of the products and then of the outcomes, I think those are two separate things. I'll start with the outcomes. Right now, today, when you and I vibe code and we get an initial project created, this concept of vibe coding even comes from this notion that what you're building is sort of vibe based. It's not necessarily structured in a way that a professional software organization would say this hits our standards, but yet it still works and it does what you wanted it to. And even the user doesn't necessarily understand exactly what's happening. Our thought process is we should keep pushing that to the point where it does look like what a professional software organization would accept. And the user still can, at a high level, understand why some of these things exist. So, a couple of things that every software organization, like theoretically, should have. You should have agent documentation for your agent that helps guide it on how to navigate in the project. You should have testing infrastructure, unit end-to-end tests. You should have automated validation like linters and type checkers, and secret scanners, right? You should have pre-commit hooks. You should have CI/CD. You should have logging, error tracking. You should have security scanning. If you are not necessarily a professional software developer, you shouldn't need to think much more than, I know that I've got tests in my code base, and I know that thing tests this. And I know that secrets get scanned, so no one can ever, when I deploy my vibe coded website, nothing's bad is going to happen, right? And so when you think about it from that perspective, there are all these things that you can actually build such that the agents enforce these high quality practices, where they say to you, oh, by the way, like as we're getting started, I noticed you don't have testing infrastructure. Before we proceed, I think it's probably important that we get this set up. And then you can say, what's an end-to-end test? And probably by the end, you'll learn what an end-to-end test is. You'll learn that concept. You don't need to know about, high quality dependency injection in order to know that testing your product is good. And I think most people will start building this intuition around these like primitives of good software development, but they won't need to be 10 years in the industry, know every little nuance of the language in order to get that success. So I think that's one big area. Like agent readiness means having high quality software practices built into the code bases. And that means your agents need to know how to make that work. So that's I think probably like 50-60% of what is coming very
Wow.
soon.
Wow.
Um,
That's very, very promising because I can't tell you how like exhausting it is for me sometimes to bring the models forward that I've been using. I have made up a specific documentation folder for when I ship features. I have, like it's like a mini project management thing that I had an agent build for me that says like whenever this actual documentation here is in active folder, it's active, right? So I'm just taking
yep.
advantage of the agentic loop to like read the slash files, the actual file system to know like, oh, in my context, I see active. So therefore I'm going to think it's active. If
Yeah,
I see
totally.
archived, then so it's like, these little kind of small mini hacks are just, I don't want to write a tool. I just wanted to have it when it's reading my code base to already understand that in one pass. And so it's like, these little tweaks are now, you're saying like, I feel like everyone's kind of sharing these publicly live. And that's kind of why you're saying like, I want these agents overall, like as a philosophy, to share what we're doing underneath the hood in some way, because there's just almost too much to chew off. But every single thing that you guys are doing is kind of getting everyone closer to be there. And so if someone who hasn't tried Droid yet, and you're kind of just kind of popping into the live stream right now, what is the first thing that they should be kind of taking advantage of to get started? Like, in terms of like, is it just like the turning on the spec mode and just having a conversation, or like, what do you think that kind of will get them to see what we're already seeing in this like, agentic future with their coding and stuff?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that the best way to get started is to, when you have when you have a task in mind that you want to delegate to a coding agent, I think you should really think, this is a task that might take me somewhere between 1 to 3 hours, 1 to 4 hours to do manually, right? I'm going to read through the code base. I'm going to make a couple of changes. And when you have a task like that, that is something that is like very squarely in the domain of a single session with a coding agent, right? You enter into the droid, I would suggest using Shift Tab to move into specification mode.
Mhm.
And then what you do is you say, this is what I want to build. And then you let the agent sort of enter that and build that specification. And I think one big thing, people may be familiar with like planning modes in other tools. What we saw was planning was very oriented around what the agent is going to like do next. Like, first I will do this, then I will do that. And because that's what a plan is. It's what you're going to do next. It's your step by step. For us, specification is much more about what it is that you'll actually build and how you'll validate that what you've built is correct. So that might mean it has this functionality, and like, do not stop until it has, functionality A. But it also
Wow.
may mean passes these tests, or properly sends this sort of message. And you'll even see the droid occasionally, and you can also just prompt it if you don't see this, will write up temporary scripts to like test its own functionality, and then it'll remove it because the user didn't ask for
Wow.
those tests to be like fully checked in. And so for us, this validation loop is incredibly important in getting the agent to do the thing that you'd like it to do. And I think you see that best when you actually specify in advance what it is that you want.
Wow. Wow. So that's a really amazing pro tip. That if you're just tuning in right now, maybe you just got Droid installed. Maybe the folks who were testing with me live, like I sort of kind of broke into it, but I didn't really like realize that I should just kind of start out with this and kind of see, like better define the spec with the Droid. So I just can't wait to get off the stream and start like coding, live with
Yeah.
this. Cause I can't believe, okay. So there is a thing for me. I feel like I kind of poke fun of it. We call ourselves like the AI anonymous, where like it's like we use AI a lot. We really are into these tools. There are a couple people in my community. Y'all know who you are. They hit the 3 comma club, and they basically have consumed a billion tokens. Like in a month. When using these types of AI coding tools. So they have lots and lots of experience. They're constantly like they're just working all the time, and they're like super locked in. And I think here, something like that, just hearing that keyword of like the spec driven. So when you're using the droid, just hit Shift Tab, you'll see the little thing, it'll turn purple and say spec. I think it's in spec mode or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of different like modes. Like, you can move to spec mode, and then there's auto run. And auto run sort of lets you select a autonomy level, which sounds a little complicated, but basically what we saw is a lot of tools gave you 2 options. Like, I have to approve every single decision, or dangerously accept all commands that might get fired off by this system. And so our thought process was, we should probably make that a little bit more everybody is going to go and say, just let this thing run. And I think that ends up actually being more unsafe in the end. And so spec mode is basically the Shift Tab, and it should say spec mode, and it'll be purple.
Wow. So if you guys haven't had a chance to try, ladies and gentlemen, I have a link that's currently in the description, and it's also in the YouTube live stream. If you haven't had a chance, I'm going to also type it into the comments so you can see, because there's some folks watching on X. There's also some folks watching on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it'll also be in the description, and then also on Twitch as well. So that'll get you started if you haven't had a chance to. It's going to be 40 million tokens you can get to use over 2 months. I know some folks are only seeing it show up for 30 days or something like that. So I'm going to be working with the team to make sure that that gets kind of looked into and so forth. But I mean, 40 million tokens, it's enough to ship, I'd say like 40 features. Each feature that I've been shipping has been around like 1.2 million tokens. It doesn't really consume a lot of tokens as much as I thought it would be because they seem to be extremely efficient with their actual token usage. It only costs you $20 to get about 20 million tokens worth of stuff per month. So if you sign up with my link, basically you get 2 months worth of tokens for free just to get started, which is awesome. I don't earn any commission, but this is just really a part of the sponsorship that Factory AI is doing to not only sponsor the channel, but also actually give you access to get started with this. And as we found out through this thing, it's like their mission isn't to get you addicted to like stay with them. I think it's just more about like literally putting this type of software out there into the world so that it's like their belief system just right from the very beginning has just been, you know, the agents, like this specific type of detail, Eno's background and stuff like that. We didn't even get into that. So we could pop into a little bit, but like for me, it's just been really important to make sure that everyone in my community can code with these types of tools and understand that something like this is out there. And this is something that I so heavily believe in as a future because I have been coding with these AI tools from the very beginning. And I do believe that if you can control like the input, control the output, if you can actually kind of get whatever's in here out into a computer and let it do its work, we're at that stage now where these types of like tooling is finally arrived. Late 2025, entering 2026 is going to just be absolutely insane because this whole year, I remember people were saying 2025 was a year of agents. You know, I don't think they really understood what that really was going to play out into. And you know, the coding stuff is kind of like the best benchmarks here. And so as technical founders, like, have there been anything that you've used Droids where you're like, damn, this is actually something really special that we've built here? Have there been any projects like that you've been kind of working on and you're like, dang?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think that the thing that has been most magical is when you sort of go into we have this very common workflow that we have internally at Factory. So we will enter into a meeting room and we will sit there with a transcription tool. And so we'll actually have this full like 60-minute engineering design discussion where we will talk it through. We'll be on a whiteboard and we're recording every word that is being spoken inside of these meetings.
Wow.
And so we chat, we talk it through. We sometimes even reference the fact that we're being recorded. We'll say like, oh, actually, make sure to note, you know, that thing. So it's almost like there's like another system in the room with us. And then what we do is we take that transcription and we put it into a droid. And then the droid builds out a specification for exactly like very, very precisely exactly what it is that we're trying to build with trade-offs. And we actually have native integrations. This is like one of the lesser advertised features, but you know, the Factory platform is not just a CLI tool, right? We have our CLI, which is super capable, but we have a web platform that has you know, remote agents, background agents, as well as like this local bridge that lets you use the web platform on your local machine. That web platform is mobile optimized, so you can actually access it on the web, like on your mobile phone. We have Slack and Linear integrations so that you can just tag tickets with droids or send Slack messages tagging the droid. And I think that in building all of that, what we did was we would basically go in and talk through what needed to be built, transcribe it, put it in a droid. Droid outputs this long form engineering design doc of exactly and precisely what needs to be built. And for the larger changes, we have it build a phase by phase implementation, right? Where each phase is a ticket. And then we delegate those individual tickets to droids. And they one at a time will go in and actually build these features. And so the largest feature that, or the largest like change that has been done with this was literally like, I'm not kidding, like 12,000 line diff
Woo!
when the final PR was created from all of the sub PRs being like merged together.
That's
And it
ridiculous.
was successful. Like it worked. It is the part of our product that basically handles the a lot of front end rendering was
Yeah.
not working very well. And so we spent this, there was like this hour-long conversation. People went in the room. One of our engineers, Alvin, has been super hardcore about performance.
Yeah.
We talked it, we hashed it out, and then he sent to like hundreds of sub droids basically this large scale refactor, and it worked. And that for us was company wide a very mind blowing moment, because this is something we have been saying is going to happen. And then we sort of stumbled into it happening. Like we weren't sure if it was going to work exactly the way that I just described. And then it just kept working and kept working. And when we ended, we had this massive change, and it was successful.
Wow. So the name of your actual company, I think, is called the San Francisco AI Factory. Is that
AI
what it's called?
Factory. Yeah, the San Francisco AI Factory.
You can see why and where these guys are going. And like, I kind of want to talk a little bit, like, kind of towards the end here. It's like a little bit about your background. Kind of like, if you don't know these folks, they are like, I mean, I'm gonna say right here, right now, they're cracked as hell. I think, and they're very humble about it. And I think that's kind of what I really appreciate about this whole thing. It's just like this yearn, this need to want to solve this deep problem for not only themselves but for the world, and then like not be like, hey, this is my secrets, I can't tell you how my secret sauce works, so just kind of like, y'all chill out here. It's like the opposite. It's like, yo, I think we have too much work to do. In fact, if you're interested, come work with us. Like, I think you guys are hiring, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
for anyone who's really interested, and if you're really playing around with these types of systems, definitely hit them up, because they're looking for people who are on the edge. My folks who are on that billion, the 3 comma clubs. If you've probably been playing around with a lot of these different agents and know a lot of different techniques. And so, like, tell me a little bit more about kind of, I know your founding background, like how this kind of got started as far as an inception, and then why you guys chose to stay with your vision. Because I feel like a lot of stuff has really changed in the industry just over 2 years. I mean, just even 6 months is crazy, but like 2 years. So I kind of want to hear a little bit about your background, kind of the evolution from this as well.
Yeah, totally. Would be happy to share that. And if you are in the 3 comma club, by the way, for prompt for token usage, please do reach out, because I'd love to chat with you. That's exactly the persona that is great that would work well at Factory. The TLDR for me, I started off in undergrad. A lot of the work that I did was like actually like neuroscience, cognitive science focused. I was really obsessed with the idea of like machine intelligence, computational models of cognition. Like, how can we build systems that more closely resemble how humans think? And the lab that I was in, and my thesis was actually related to deep learning on like EEG activity, fMRI data. All this stuff was very cool, very powerful. And I think that like very, very long term, that's something that I'm always going to be obsessed with, is that idea of how can we build systems that more closely resemble ourselves. But I ended up sort of taking this path where I worked at Microsoft for a bit, where I saw this huge company dynamic. I saw that's a true software factory, right? Like, that company ships, even though it's large companies are not always lauded as the fastest shippers. The reality is that company is a behemoth, right? And they build so much software. And then I went to Hugging Face because my obsession with at the time small language models as maybe the path towards this sort of more general machine intelligence started to become too strong. So I was like, oh, I really just need to work directly on this again.
Mm.
And Hugging Face, I'm very grateful for that opportunity, because the leadership team there, probably through someone who was, it was maybe not, my background at that time was not uh, as maybe like flashy as one might need in order to meet with these fantastic engineering leaders. I got to meet with people who were startup founders. I got to meet with like companies like Databricks and Bloomberg and Grammarly. I was meeting with the people who were deciding their AI roadmap and figuring out, like, how do we even train LLMs? What does it mean to train an LLM? Who knows how to train? What is our hiring strategy for people who know how to build these LLMs? And so I was really in the room with all these enterprise engineering leaders, and it became very clear that everyone had one goal, which was engineering velocity, but no one knew how to achieve that. And their like the main thought loop was LLMs seem pretty interesting. Copilot gives you this autocomplete. So if we fine tune an LLM on our own code base, then we'll have the best autocomplete. And at the time, that actually seemed like pretty like that seemed to be like what most people were interested in. And meanwhile, like I was talking to the folks at like Ling Chain and all these people who were interested in chaining together LLMs, because the term agent wasn't really thrown around.
Right.
It was more like chaining LLMs or putting them in a while loop, and then agent was just starting to sort of like bubble up as a term for
Mm.
these sorts of LLM based systems. And I managed to sort of build out some prototypes, and then I serendipitously met my co-founder Matan, and he and I were, he likes to say it's like intellectual love at first sight. We really met each other, and I think we realized we had such a similar vision of what had progressed so far, what was going to change, that we met, and like 7 days later, he dropped out of his PhD. I quit my job. We started Factory. We turned that around and immediately raised a very small like seed round in order to get started with a small team, because we were very focused on not chasing like a bunch of hype, but instead we wanted enough money to be able to take a small team in San Francisco and ruthlessly iterate until we felt like we had a real product, not like a research oriented thing, but like a real tool that people could use. And so, 7 days of chatting, and then we decided to go all in together.
I love this comment from Abe. It says 7 days later, love at first sight.
Yeah, love at first insight. I love that.
And
That's
yeah, first insight.
fantastic.
Yeah. That is absolutely a amazing founding story, because I mean, to also kind of have that world of experience and then to get that conviction, I think when you're in this space, you're so like focused and you're like, okay, this actually makes sense to me. And what do you think is going to be most surprising to the world? Because as I talk to this to like any other person who's not in the AI space outside of the San Francisco bubble, I don't think they really see what's coming. How would you describe this to like your grandparents or someone who's not really into AI, and like either like what you're doing and then how this is really going to impact maybe their lives and whether they realize it or not?
Yeah, totally. We it's funny. One of our team members had their one of their grandparents in the office actually, looking at some of the stuff we were doing. I mean, the way that I would say it is, what's funny is everybody, no matter who you are, if you have access to a computer and you're on the internet, or you're watching TV, I think that you're going to see so much negativity actually about what AI is going to do in the future. You have like CEOs and investors sort of shouting from the rooftops things like, maybe we'll be able to like, at some point we're going to build machine god and the GDP will go to 10 trillion, and then, if you ask them why is that going to happen, they're going to be like, oh, I don't know, maybe we'll fire all human beings and like replace them with robots. And then on the other end, you have people talking about the climate impact, and there's so much negativity. And then there's also like very almost like what I'd call like naive optimism for AI. And so I think
Mm.
that most people basically see like two straw men arguments for like what AI is going to do. And I think that what's interesting is like, first of all, like that concept of like, we're just going to go to a 10 trillion and fire everybody and replace them with machines, like it's just totally unrealistic, right? It's something that you can use to maybe temporarily raise your stock price. But I think that the people who are clearly most on the ground are the people who are like in this live stream, the people who are using AI coding tools, the people who are, because what you see is that clearly these things make your life easier. They're fun to use. They're incredibly interesting. They let you get more done. They let you be more creative. They let you explore ideas faster. And at the same time, you're piloting them. Like you're still in charge. Like you have agency. You have this ability to build so much more. And so I think that the thing that I would say to, let's say my grandparents is, I think that we're about to enter an explosion of creativity and of software abundance, where really like 50 years ago, 60 years ago, we were just building the beginning of the internet. It'd been around to some extent. Uh, Even like computers in general, right, are less than 100 years old. Uh, we've just really entered into the new era of what technology is going to do for us, and the people who are clearly on the forefront of that era are software developers. And so, if you want to experience what the closest thing to like true artificial like general intelligence is going to feel like, I think you need to be using software coding tools, because then what you see is that it's not scary. It's not like Terminator. What it is it means this huge unlock. I also want to add, this is where I'm going to go a little like woo woo, a little crazy, but I think you should, think about what you're doing when you interact with these tools. Like, have you ever chatted with an LLM? Like, have you ever spoke to your coding tools? Have you ever asked the LLM, like, how does it prefer to be used? Have you interacted with it more as a colleague and less like a tool? I think that you should give that a try too. You should ask the system, what can I do better here? Someone was asking me on Twitter, like, do you have any tips for getting it to? Like, it feels like I get in these doom loops with other tools. Like, how do you get around that? And I was like, I think you should just ask the system, you are currently in a doom loop and I don't really know how to get you out of it. So do you have any advice on how to get yourself out of it? Right. Uh, the
Wake
OpenAI team
up.
told us that GPT-5 is like the best meta prompter that they've ever interacted with, because GPT-5 deeply understands its own system prompting techniques. And
Interesting.
so you can actually ask it, hey, what's wrong with my prompt right now?
Wow. That's really impressive. I want to involve my community at this last part of this live stream, because I know a lot of you have been like really kind of streaming in the comments, and I really appreciate it. So any questions you guys have, I'm going to go ahead and review them. And I kind of want to turn this into like, if you've made it this far, we're like 56 minutes in. We have been cooking and kind of really kind of going over the whole factory AI thing, and I'm really proud to have you guys as my sponsor for this channel. And it's just been really amazing to kind of play around with the tool. And like for me, I really believe in this type of future, like what you guys are all about, what's actually happening, and the impact that it's going to have on computers going forward, which is really interesting. And it's like, if you haven't had a chance to try it out, I have the link in the description, and that'll get you basically 2 months worth or 40 million tokens for you to go try out this droid. And if you're not liking it, you could even bring your own key. There's just so many different techniques we've talked about. And I kind of want to use this last part to kind of geek out a little bit, because you talked about GPT-5, meta prompting, and just go a little bit deeper but beyond the surface, as far as like, we touched on it at the very beginning. It's like, what is the difference between maybe the tool harnessing that's happening in Droid for what you're seeing in GPT-5 versus Claude and stuff earlier, and kind of how that makes a difference where, maybe if specific foundational lab is only focused on their own model, they're not going to actually see the other holes. Especially if you're doing agentic loops, it makes a lot of sense to have these types of considerations for that. So I want you to go a little bit deeper here, like on the GPT-5. I know a lot of people are saying it's just kind of at the very beginning they didn't really like it, and then now they're saying they really like it and it's better. And you talked about this meta prompting thing. Like, what are you seeing in GPT-5 more specifically that's makes it interesting, that can kind of explain the vibes that people are seeing, right?
Yeah, totally. Personally, I GPT-5 Codex is my like daily driver. GPT-5 and GPT-5 Codex are actually very similar models, and the OpenAI team worked really closely with us to make sure that the experience was high quality in our product suite with both of these models. And I think that the thing that's interesting about GPT-5 Codex, it's very clearly a quiet driver of productivity. It is less chatty. It likes to interact less outside of its like core goal. It's very agentic, and it does more deeply understand this idea of like specification and checkpointing. And I think that those are the things that make it feel really nice. It is also very nice that it's cheaper than the other models, right? And so I think that like the interesting thing about GPT-5 is, I honestly think that this is a pattern that you're going to start to see a lot more frequently. It's going to condense though the period of, oh, this new model came out, and then suddenly I think a lot of product teams aren't used to the changes that you have to make. Earlier in the stream, I said, for the folks who weren't here, if you're using GPT-5, then the way that you, for example, choose to edit code is different from if you're using Sonnet. And so if you're building an agent that uses that a coding agent, for example, that uses Sonnet and uses GPT-5, you need two different tools in order to make those both work optimally. And I think that what's going to continue to happen is models are going to keep coming out, and they are going to have these sorts of nuance. They're going to have different personalities. They're going to have different patterns. They're going to have different tool use specs based on the post training. And because I think this is actually going to accelerate because most model providers are in the post training era where they're building interactive reinforcement learning environments. They're getting really specific about how a model's agent trajectory should look. And so based on how they've chosen to build those things, different tools are going to work better, or your tool definition may be dangerously close to one that they've already post-trained in a slightly different way. So you're going to keep trying to like get the model to do it one way, and it's going to keep sliding back into its post-training where it acts a different way. And so what I
Mm.
think everybody saw when GPT-5 first came out is a bunch of companies are not used to building like that. They're used to just like we're swapping the model and then they get an instant 50% boost. And when you just do that, when you like just swap the model, I think what ends up happening is your product just gets a little bit better, but it also does weirder things, and you're not really maximizing the outcome of the model. And so a lot of what our product does is, and our scaffold does, is it makes sure that it's easy for us to quickly figure out exactly what the nuances of the model are, and then quickly update things like how we inject information, what the tool definitions are, how the prompt caching works, to make sure that we continue to have like the best possible experience with a given model.
I think that's super duper impressive as far as like the insights here, and then kind of, like that type of thing that people are sharing. I know people are currently asking right now, how do I get the 40 million tokens? I want to just drop this link on you guys real quick. So if you haven't had a chance to, it's right here. It's rfer.me/rayfactory. I noticed that when I type stuff into my little program, it doesn't actually put it on X for whatever reason. So I know the X folks are currently asking. So just go ahead and type in that link there. That'll get you, if you just click there, it's going to take you right to the sign up. And then when you sign up, it's going to get you, boom, 40 million tokens dropped right into your account so that you can start cooking with this droid. Because I feel like this is going to be the best way to kind of experience it. Obviously, like learn by doing and kind of approach it in this type of way. And a question I had from GitMax is basically about interrupting the droid agent for steering. Cloud Code recommends this sort of practice, but like, how does that work with the droid? Because I've noticed that too. I just kind of insert my question and I see it kind of pop up in the middle of its thinking phases. And so would love your insight on that.
Yeah, totally. So the way that this was a contentious, I think that it's honestly, it's still up in the air. We have both implementations basically feature flagged for this. So I'll tell you how it works today.
Okay.
When you send a message to a droid, it queues it for the next iteration of the agent loop. So a lot of products wait for the agent loop to fully complete before it then inserts the next message. But what we found is that if you send your message like as it's about to take its next action, most of what people are actually doing when we spoke to users is they're trying to get it to switch what it's doing in the middle of its work. So that they might say something like, "Oh wait, actually it's not over there, it's over here," or "Hey, actually like stop editing that file because it's not working. I instead want you to edit this other file." So that's how it works today. You send your message, it gets queued, and then it gets inserted in the immediate next action. But we've also heard from other folks that they prefer maybe waiting for the droid to fully complete, and then they want to basically queue a net new task. Like,
Mm.
for example, go do this thing, and then they want to say, oh, and I forgot to say this, but once you're done, write unit tests for it, right?
Ah.
So I know other products work like that, but what we found is that the queuing as the next immediate action helps you steer the droid like very, very quickly
Mm.
without breaking the prompt caching.
Okay. That's pretty interesting to know as far as kind of where we're at here. And it's kind of, I like how honest you guys are. Like, this is still to be determined. Obviously from the based off the feedback, and if people have feedback, I think they hit like /bug report or something to give some feedback to your team. Is that what it is?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
If you have feedback, slash bug helps you. It builds a little example of a bug report that you can share with us. We're active on email. I think the web app has a built-in support functionality, so you can send support messages there. Please don't spam that. But if you have real bugs, and honestly, like if you follow me on Twitter or anything like that, I will take. If you hunt me down on the street and you find me, I will happily write a bug report live on the spot with you together. Like I really want to make sure that this experience is so great and so amazing. And I think that can only happen from the community also sharing the things that they want to see in it, the bugs they encounter, features. We definitely want to build for you guys.
That's really amazing. I definitely appreciate that. It's just like you guys are not trying to hide. I think Fetty Hustle was asking here about the BMAD method for basically specs and planning. Interesting if you had experience with that, if you know what the differences are, or kind of what, like what does the Droid do? Can it use both? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, totally. So in terms of the spec thing, that's definitely very native. Like you can use specification mode in our product, which basically lets you can hit shift tab and that will bring you into spec mode. There's actually a setting. I haven't said this on the stream yet. If you go into your settings, there's a setting that lets you save those specs as markdown whenever you accept them. So you can actually bring those specs into the code base directly. But with respect to the BMAD like workflow or method, we do have custom slash commands. And so if you wanted to have spec mode, for example, properly create those like PRD and architecture docs, what you can do is you can create a custom slash command, call it slash BMAD or something like that, or slash plan, or really anything you'd like. And then that will prompt the agent to follow the BMAD method. And so you actually should be able to do both of these things. And if you've already done this for Claude Code, you can easily import custom commands that you've already created from Claude Code. You can import custom sub agents from Claude Code so that it's very easy to keep all of that work that you've already done so far.
Oh, that's excellent. Yo, that's amazing. I think that's going to just make it easier for people who are migrating between the platforms and stuff. And that's definitely really appreciated. Also appreciate that you guys are just like pretty much on the feedback. I do see it a lot on Twitter. People are responding and they post something. You're like, hey, do you want to try it? Let me know with your email. Like you guys are super duper active. I find that super impressive, and I'm kind of blown away, to be honest. It's like, how are you guys like staying? Are you guys ever sleep? That type of thing. So
yeah, well, we've got some droids that help us out with finding things, and then we always, as like human beings, respond to people.
Right.
But that actually helps.
That's amazing. And I think you talked a little bit about this because you guys had a really hairy problem in your organization, and you literally had a meeting, recorded the transcripts, and just deployed a bunch of factories, agents, factory droids to go like do the task basically. And so are we pretty close to this reality here where you could just say improve my app based on the customer feedback, because you have Sentry hooked up and everything and should be able to get that input and all that stuff's in your code, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that for the folks who are willing to get a little bit more in the weeds with factory, I said this earlier, but we actually have this full platform, and so you can. Our personal take is you can do that today if you want to get the end-to-end loop from customer feedback to code change. You can integrate factory with your Slack, and you can integrate it with your Linear. And so if you use Slack, where a customer maybe every bug report they file falls into Slack, or it auto creates a ticket, or if you even want to automate that process with a droid, right? You can do that. And then if you've integrated this, like what we have is when bug reports come filed in our Slack channel, where those get automatically passed, you just tag at droid, or you would install it as at factory, because that's what it is on the public Slack. But this is all in our platform, by the way. So you just go to settings, install Slack, and then you tag the ticket. The droid will grab all of the context from that Slack thread. So even if there's a conversation inside the Slack thread, or you link a website, or you link maybe even other tickets, Droid will grab all of those different tickets and context, and then it will build out that feature and send it over in Slack with the pull request. So we're sort of there at this moment of you can go fully end to end without touching a line of code from customer feedback.
That's so crazy. I think that makes sense though, because that's your vision from the very beginning, and that you've been building that out. And that's actually possible today, which is super duper nice that this type of integration is kind of, you know, that people can go ahead and try it out. I like this comment here. This says, I'm not in the 3 comma club, but I've been through a few 100 million tokens. Thanks for the 40 million. This is much appreciated for sure. For sure.
Oh,
So
glad you
yeah.
liked it.
Yeah. Also, for those who are wondering on Twitter what the handle is, Get Max dropped it here below. It's Eno Reyes at Eno Reyes. So yeah, go ahead and hit them up. I think there's like the factory team in general. If you even just tag their factory AI on X, they're extremely responsive and they'll definitely get back to it and so forth like that. I know some other folks were having some issues with the 30-day free, like they'll see 30 days in their account. And I'm not sure if like the 40 million credits will continue to roll over because I think in the UI it just shows 30 days for the billing. So it might just be like, yeah.
Yeah, I know that is very likely a UI bug, and so I'll literally send off a droid immediately after this to go and fix that. But in the meantime, please, it is 60 days for the referral code. And if anybody ever has any issues with these, one thing that maybe is worth shouting out, actually, I sort of forgot about this. We have an open source GitHub repository. If you go to github.com/factory-AI/factory, there's a community forum there, our discussion board. You can make pull requests to the docs, that we have public docs, and we have cookbooks and other examples. You can also open up issues if you have any issues with the product. So that might be a good place as well to find other people in the community. And Ben Tossell, our head of developer relations, manages that community.
And then the factory AI slash, I think factory dash AI slash, what was the slash command?
It's just that first one, factory.
Okay. Oh, okay. Got it. Got it. Cool.
Yeah, that first repo in the upper left corner.
Perfect. Awesome. I'll drop this in the chat. And so this is where they can submit issues and so forth, get into the discussions and all the various things here. That's awesome.
Yep,
oh, and this exactly. has the website. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm going to drop this in the chat so that way people have this and so forth. Awesome. Dang. Yeah, this is super duper cool. And I think a lot of people if you haven't had a chance to try the factory stuff, definitely go ahead and try it out. Like I said, I have that link there. If you're watching on X, I dropped it earlier, rfer.me/Ray Factory. And then that's where you can kind of get started with the trial to get that going. This has been an amazing conversation and we've been cooking for about like an hour and stuff. And I appreciate you taking the time to just get on the show and kind of get here with us and like show your guys' like level of commitment and kind of be a part of this, what I call like the earliest movement we have for AI coding. And historically, I think this is actually something that's really going down in history with like all of us understanding that this is the time and place that change is really happening. And that even if we're just getting started today, like just prompting with the models, like you said, how important it is just to have those conversations is going to teach you a lot. You're going to break through all the noise from obviously the external world where everyone's saying, doom this or whatever. And I think, software is the greatest leverage right now. And now you're having pieces of software that helps you get your ideas out and you can learn to be, a better, orchestrator and all these various things. So I'm extremely excited that you guys, are sponsoring the show, obviously, and are giving out this 40 million tokens for my audience for everyone to kind of go ahead and try out. And for those who don't know, you can pay $20 a month, and you'll get, for 1 month, you'll get 20 million tokens, or you can bring your own keys as well. And the Droid CLI is like the latest thing that they've released. And, it's not like it may look like every other CLI, but it actually does a lot more behind the hood for shipping features. And for me, I feel like you could just throw the kitchen sink at it and it will really, really cook for you and everyone. If you haven't had a chance to try, go ahead and check that out. Any closing thoughts, any things you want to kind of leave the audience with that they should be doing or anything you want to share on your behalf?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just, we are coming into this space and obviously you guys as developers have so many options and tools available to you. Like you and it's an awesome time to be a dev, right? Like you can pick up, there's a new tool every other week. And I also understand though that can lead to this feeling of like, I'm sort of overwhelmed by there being hundreds of different options. our goal first and foremost is to just come in here and say, we're a team of 35 people in San Francisco that really just want to build something that makes you guys significantly more productive, that makes you have fun, something that you can use and that helps you be creative. And we're going to keep working extremely hard to make that happen for you. And so, besides any given individual feature or any individual component that makes it better or worse than other tools, I think that one thing that we'd love to be as a company is the one that really speaks truth about what we're doing, which is working really hard, trying really hard, building something that we think is going to change your workflow, and listening really intently to what you guys need. And so please do blow our emails up, blow our channels up with feedback, with nits. Every bug you find helps us improve. So don't be afraid to give it a try and say, this thing sucks. But I'd just love for you to explain why it sucked so that we can make it better for you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much for hopping on the stream, for kind of being this open, really, for leading up this charge for this like monumental task that you guys have taken up. I sincerely believe in the future, and this is kind of why it's really important that I want to have this partnership, sponsorship with you guys. It really does mean a lot to me. It means a lot to my community as well that you guys are on here. You're actually really my first official sponsor because I deeply believe in what you guys are doing. And I want to continue to see this grow, and I want everyone to experience it. And just also the big thank you for not only extending the 20 million tokens, but like adding doubling that so people can get that 40 million to really give this thing a spin and kind of try to throw a lot of stuff at it. And I think the bigger part of it is like your responsibility on the other half, right? Like I would be so afraid if like you guys just were not responsive, or it was just kind of like like I don't like to recommend things where people don't get the other half of like my own belief system, right? Like I deeply believe in good customer service. I deeply believe in these small attention to details. I deeply believe actually in agentic coding being the future. Not that we are as individuals are going to get replaced as coders, but more than ever, there's going to be more demand for more people like you. If you're a designer, if you're a developer, if you're a person with ideas, making them come to life. But then where you're going with this product pipeline in the future, like you're saying, for these other planning things, other SWE workflows that are, senior engineers have, that now if you're a junior, you can actually be as powerful as a senior engineer and maybe get those opportunities that maybe they're currently missing right now, or to go build that next startup, or to do whatever dreams they want to chase. So deeply enthralled, super excited about everything you guys are doing there at Factory AI. So, thank you so much for coming on the show. Also, thank you to the community of people who have been able to support here as members. And big shout out to new subscribers, everyone on X, on YouTube. Thank you so much for supporting the stream. And we'll be having some more streams soon. And you'll see me cooking throughout the week, checking out Factory AI and, trying to share some of these techniques back. So if you haven't had a chance to, make sure you subscribe. Obviously, thumbs up for the algo because we like to do that type of thing around here. And we'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, peace out.